and welcome to the May 13th Township Committee meeting. We just returned from executive session, so we apologize that we're a few minutes late. Greg, can we move to the flag salute?
Let's see. You should now see the flag.
You can join us in the salute for the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Greg? May I have someone who will move the agenda for this evening's meeting?
So moved.
And Greg, is that with the
Second.
addition? That's with the addition of 143? Yes, that's been on.
And we have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. We have a lot of wonderful things for proclamations for this month. We have 4 on our agenda for this evening. Military Appreciation Month, EMS Week, the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and National Police Officers Week. So we'll get started with those. Whereas the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, enumerated in our Declaration of Independence, secured by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and enjoyed by every citizen of the United States, are secured by the dedication of the members of the United States Armed Forces. And whereas the sacrifices made by all members of the United States Armed Forces and their loved ones are to be valued, and the brave men and women of our community who served and enlisted, ready to defend our homeland and safeguard the freedoms and values for which we stand, deserve our recognition. Chatham Township residents have a proud history of service in the United States Armed Forces in times of peace and in times of war. And whereas we observe Armed Forces Day on Saturday, May 15th, and we thank the Library of the Chathams for creating the Veterans Project of the Chathams, this initiative will collect, archive, and make available to the public oral and written histories of veterans who are or were residents of the Chathams and inspire us to offer service to our community.
Tracy, microphone.
Oh, I apologize. And country in the ways in which we can. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Township Committee of the Township
Coming to the webinar.
What?
No, not to the web.
Of the Township of Chatham, that the month of May 2021 be Military Appreciation Month, and all residents and community members be encouraged to recognize those who have served, who are currently serving our nation, and thank them for their dedication and contributions. Thank you very much for Tom Salvis, who has been a longtime volunteer and member of our Communications Committee for helping to put this forward with the Library of the Chathams. Our second proclamation has to do with our EMS. And I believe, Greg, that there is someone who is going to be receiving this proclamation for us this evening?
Yes, it's coming in now.
Mike?
For the Military Appreciation Week, we should thank Tom Salvis, Air Force. Did you? Okay. I'm glad something, Bob.
We have a lot going on behind the scenes. Mike, thank you for coming here tonight. Our proclamation has to do with Emergency Services Week. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to go to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine. And whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of the emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And where it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of our emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, I, Tracy Ness, Mayor, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 16th through the 22nd as Emergency Medical Services Week. With the EMS Strong theme, "This is EMS, Caring for Our Communities," I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. And if you see one of our EMS personnel, give them a big thank you. And Mike, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. We really appreciate the proclamation, and I'm very honored to accept the proclamation on behalf of all the hardworking members of the Chatham Emergency Squad. The last 12 months have been rather interesting. The squad faced unprecedented levels of risk, complexity, and uncertainty. Our people were equal to the task. Not a single call went unanswered in our community, despite the very real fear that we were each facing great personal risk on every call, particularly back April, May, June last year. Our squad is 100% volunteer. Each member has a personal stake in the health of our community. Volunteer does not mean less educated, skilled, or responsive than paid services. And in fact, we are certain that we are superior to paid services for our community. All our members are held to very high standards of initial and continuing education, and a significant number of our members work in or are studying in healthcare. We have emergency room nurses, techs, we have state EMT instructors, we have dispatchers, career EMTs that also work elsewhere in paid services, as well as several college students who are on pre-med and nursing tracks. We greatly appreciate the strong support of our community. Many volunteer departments in the state, including some in our local area, are greatly struggling. Some have closed. It's largely due to a lack of volunteers and support in those communities. Many agencies have had to hire paid services to cover significant gaps in their ability to respond in their own towns. This is not the case for Chatham Emergency Squad. We continue to operate with excellent staffing levels, provided by volunteers from our own community, and financially, we're supported largely by the generous donations of our residents. Thank you again for the proclamation recognizing our service. We're not in this business for public acclamation, but we certainly appreciate the recognition for the work we do. So, thank you all.
Well deserved, and please thank everyone at the squad for us.
Certainly will.
Thank you. And good
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody.
We'll move on to our next proclamation for AAPI Heritage Month. Whereas AAPI Heritage Month originated in 1978, when New York Congressman Frank Horton introduced a bill that called for the first week of May to receive that designation, President Carter issued the first presidential proclamation for Asian Pacific American Heritage Week in March of 1979, and AAPI Heritage Week was expanded to a commemorative month in 1990 in a bill signed into law by President George H.W. Bush, which was reauthorized each year until May received a permanent designation in a law enacted in 1992. And whereas Congressman Horton was inspired by former Capitol Hill staffer Jeannie Zhu, who approached him about the idea in 1976. Jeannie Zhu observed just as Black History Month was decreed by President Ford in 1976, and Hispanic Heritage Month was decreed by President Johnson in 1968, there was need to provide a similar recognition to Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And whereas Jeannie Zhu's great-grandfather, M.Y. Lee, had immigrated to the United States from China in the 1800s and had helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. As noted by Congressman Horton, M.Y. Lee became a prominent California businessman who was later killed in Oregon during a period of anti-Chinese and anti-Asian sentiment in that state. And whereas the month of May was selected for two reasons. One, to commemorate the arrival of the first known Japanese immigrants to the U.S. on May 7, 1843, and two, to honor the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 19, 1869, which upwards of 20,000 Chinese workers helped to construct. And whereas as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic, the AAPI community in the United States is experiencing an alarming rise in anti-AAPI hate crimes and bias incidents. Whereas in our continued effort to live up to the American values of freedom and justice and equality for all people, the events of this past year have made it evident that it's incumbent upon each of us as individuals to challenge our own biases and assumptions regarding race and be educated. Now, be it proclaimed that the Township of Chatham and that the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham proudly joins in recognizing the annual celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander History Month and continuing our collective journey as a community and nation in honoring and deepening our knowledge of the history and contributions of the AAPI members to the American economy, society, cultures, freedoms, and values. And moving on to our last proclamation for the evening, it is National Police Week. So we've recognized our EMS, and now we'll recognize our police. Whereas in 1962, President Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the calendar week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the Chatham Township Police Department play an important role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of our community. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, the duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that the members of our department recognize their duty to serve people by safeguarding life and property, protecting them against violence and disorder, and protecting the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression and intimidation. And whereas our police department has grown to be a modern law enforcement agency, which unceasingly provides a vital public service. Now I, Tracy Ness, Mayor of Chatham Township, do recognize the week of May 9th through 16th, 2021 as National Police Week, and further extend our appreciation to the Chatham Township Police Department and to all law enforcement for the vital services they perform, excuse me, and their exemplary dedication to the community they serve. Pardon me. Ooh, gets a little dry reading all these proclamations. So thank you very much to our police department. You do a wonderful job. We're very thankful for your service, and we're very thankful for keeping us all safe. And that ends our proclamations. Let's give a round of applause for our police department. That ends our proclamations for this evening, and we'll move on to reports. Mrs. Police?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to discuss Colony Pool since that's going to be the most issues going on. Unfortunately, in the 2013-2014 years, there was a collapse of Colony Pool memberships. The good news is we have surpassed all previous years for membership growth since then, and total numbers of members since that collapse. It's so amazing to see how many brand new members are joining the club this year. We did not just move up the time frame from when existing members sign up, but we have actually increased new memberships dramatically. Colin is so excited to welcome all these new faces as well as many returning members to the pool this year. Additionally, the league has confirmed just this Tuesday that we will be welcoming back the Colony swim team, which will have daily practice and a competition meets. In addition to the regular swim team, they will be reintroducing the developmental program for swimmers who have not yet passed the deep water test. The schedule will be shared on the Colony Facebook page as well as the website. We are also looking forward to bringing back tennis for all of our Colony Pool Club members. We have finalized our tennis program with the varsity coach of Fairleigh Dickinson University, who just came back from a national tournament. Our swim lesson program will also be back in full gear this summer. We are also welcoming an experienced new concession operator who has provided concessions for Morris County parks and other notable locations. With concessions, swim team, and tennis, we have positioned Colony to be your afternoon summer solution. Your child can go to one of the many morning camp options in the area and then spend lunch and the afternoon partaking in our tennis and swim team programs. The swim team and tennis registration will open next week. Additionally, there will be a mailer going to all households and will also be posted on our website with all the specifics on Colony Pool. So if you haven't registered, it's not too late to join our fabulous facility.
Wonderful. Great news.
Great news.
Do you have any other reports for this evening?
Nope, just Colony.
Thank you. Mark?
Yep, well, what's happening on several different committees on my front. The library at Chatham's, as reported previously, was very happy to welcome back patrons in person, and that transition went without issue, and in fact has been sort of up to the next level this month to walk-in patronage without need to have a formal reservation in advance with limited capacity, et cetera, and so forth, and that's going well. There's going to be another library book sale from the Friends of the Library this Saturday. I hope everybody who's downtown stops by. Always lots of good stuff to have there. Also, just the school board, I did have a meeting with the liaison from the school board, the school district, and the big news there is that effective Monday of next week, there's going to be in-person instruction, K through 12, Monday through Friday for everybody who wants it. There's still going to be a remote option for people who don't feel comfortable coming back to school, but it's not going to be a sort of, I'm not in today, I'm in tomorrow, I'm coming and going. It's going to be, make your choice. Anybody who wants to come to school can come to school. And 5 days a week, which is, we're already into May, but it's something. And it's great progress. So happy to report that. And that is tied to the Board of Health, obviously. Numbers are low. Vaccinations are exceptionally high. It's encouraging that people are participating in that, and things really seem to be on the right track. I'm sure everybody watching this saw the recent news on a national level, just hours before this, and looking forward to seeing everybody unmasked and out and about soon.
And you have
That's
some
it.
good news from the Business Advisory Committee.
Oh, sorry, yes, that's right, sorry. Yeah, the Business Advisory Committee also announced this week, and there's a press release regarding this on the Township website and other places, the formal launch of the business, Chatham Township Business Directory, which is, you get the details on the website, but the overview is if you own a business that's located in Chatham, or you live in Chatham Township, and you own a business that's located elsewhere that provides services to people in our community, you're encouraged to fill out the information form and become part of the new and current comprehensive Chatham Township Business Directory. So look forward to that.
Terrific. Thank you. Celeste?
Let me see.
Gosh, we can actually hear you.
I know, I'm on my iPad, so. All right, well, first of all, with the community garden, Joe Masrelli and his Boy Scout troop will be building bins for composting and wooden borders for some of the gardens. The Environmental Commission has been really busy, but one of the latest things that they're up to is Jessica Romeo and Marta McDowell planted a butterfly wayside garden at the Colony Pool entrance. And they use the plants from the Great Swamp Watershed sale. The other thing is the Historical Society. Their Pathways to History on May 1st was a great success. It featured, as part of the tour, the women of Chatham Township, the Lenape Indians, and historic preservation. And on May 30th, Pat Wells will present a program about the history of the White House. And that's all I have today.
Thank you, Celeste. Stacy?
Well, since we have a packed agenda, I'm going to keep my updates short. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Chatham Township Fire Department, the Green Village Fire Department, and the Chatham Borough Fire Department have combined together with actually Chatham Hills Acute Care and the Chatham United Methodist Church to do a food drive. So that will be this Saturday from 10 to 1. You can drop off either at the Chatham Hills Acute Care on Southern Boulevard or at the Chatham United Methodist Church, which is right by the middle school. And they run a food pantry there. They have a lot of people who come in every week. They've served anywhere from 50 to 90 families a week who are in need, and their cupboards are a little bit bare. So if anybody is able to, drop off some groceries for the food pantry, that would be great. And that's it for me.
Thank you. On tonight's agenda, there will be a presentation from the Walters Group, who is a developer for 522 Southern Boulevard. A concept plan will be discussed that was created from several meetings, taking into account the site, the community, and neighborhood concerns. This is the first step, and we welcome input on this tonight. The detailed work happens at the planning board, and we anticipate that a site plan application will be filed by June 1st, with the first public hearing at the planning board to occur on June 21st. So if you're interested in this topic, please stay tuned on the dates for the public hearings once we move into the planning board process. We'll also be discussing the Roller Knolls landfill and its future use. Myself, Stacy, and Bob have met with the EPA, along with Carl, and Stacy, Bob, and I met with the Great Swamp Watershed Association and the Great Swamp Wildlife Refuge. We are very fortunate to have such great partners in the GSWA and the refuge, and we're all on the same page about wanting to have this land available for public use. We don't have to worry about the development of this land because it's already in a restrictive covenant that prevents any commercial, residential, or active recreation on the land. And we also have to be mindful that the township may have some future financial responsibility, not as a PRP, but through a process where the PRPs can look to offset their cleanup costs by tapping those municipalities and private companies that were users of the landfill. Carl Woodward will be here this evening to provide some updates on some of the discussions that we've had. And again, the public is invited to comment. We have some good news on the skate park, as Spawn Ranch, who is a potential developer of the park, will be in our area on Monday and will be reviewing sites with our professional staff, and I believe Stacy will be there as well, and members of the skate park group, to see what opportunities there are or constraints with the land that we have potentially available. And that will hopefully lead to a presentation to the entire committee for their comment and consideration. And many thanks to our staff and administration, as our HVAC system has been fully tested, filters are in place, and the municipal building is back open for our residents as of May 3rd. Governor Murphy announced that beginning May 19th, there will be a complete removal of outdoor gathering limits, an increase in indoor gathering limits, and an elimination of percentage-based capacity limits subject to social distancing. Last night, the governor actually signed the order, which states all of these things in great detail. Some of these orders are 40 and 50 pages long. So the township staff is going to review the executive order to determine what accommodations can be made to further open our indoor spaces. Finally, our COVID case has declined, but is still remaining at 20 active cases, which was down from a high of 40 in March, but is remaining consistent at 20. And sadly, we've had 4 new cases and 3 deaths in our long-term care facilities since we last met in April. Total new cases since April 30th are at 12, but we still remain at a fairly high level of active cases, and we're hoping that those will continue to come down. So please stay vigilant, stay safe, and do your best to keep others safe. The Diversity Committee met. They're in the process of putting together a survey that's out on our Facebook site. They have created a Facebook site that you can access with the Diversity Inclusion Committee of the Chathams. So I urge you all to go take a look at that. The Joint Rec Committee has not met. The Joint Court Committee will meet in 2 weeks. 2 weeks?
June 9th.
June 9th, to review this year our contract will be up for renegotiation for the shared services. So we'll be discussing that. And I think that wraps it up. So we'll move on to our professional reports. John, do you have anything to?
Yes, Mayor. I'll just mention that we're moving forward with our this year's paving program. There was a resolution on the consent agenda authorizing work to be performed by the Morris County Co-op, and it's always we find that to be a very cost-effective way to complete the paving. As we discussed in the past, the roads that are scheduled to be paved, they are based on roads that concluded from a condition assessment that we did of the entire town, and these roads represent the worst of the worst that we have. And so we're starting at the bottom and just working on those roads. And so I can just read off the roads quickly so everyone knows. It's Rose Terrace, Johnson Drive, portions of Longwood Avenue that was not paved by the gas company. I have reached out to the borough to see, because the Longwood near Fairmont is actually a portion is owned by the borough, within the borough, and so we are trying to get the borough to agree to pay their portion so we can get the entire road paved and not leave their portion out. They have not gotten back to me yet. We're being diligent to try and get an answer for them. The paving is going to be done in 2 different phases because I kind of got stalled on my list, but we have roads that are non-funded by the NJDOT grant, and then we have one road, Noe Avenue, which is we have received grant funding for that. There is a process that we have to go through with the NJDOT to get their approval before we start that work, and we're still waiting for that approval. So it's likely that we're going to be having a contractor come in twice, and so that may give the borough a little bit more time to get back to us, but we're not going to wait forever. So we'll see how we proceed. But the other roads, Lisa Drive, a portion of Lisa Drive, a portion of Susan Drive, Hillcrest Avenue, and the center island of Woodland Avenue is included on the list. So we tentatively have the contractor lined up to start the week of May 24th. We have it's around the corner. So we will be posting notices on the website just to keep people aware of the schedule. We do send out advance notices to all the residents so that they are aware that the paving is coming, and then we'll get another notice out to the residents once we get a firm date from the contractor of when he's going to start. We have reached out to all the utility companies, and we looked at all our road opening permits to either have those completed or revoked, so that we do have that moratorium. Once we pave a road, you can't open up for 5 years. So we're going through our normal due diligence and making sure the roads are ready to be paved, and coordinating efforts with the DPW, having them come in, fix basins, and so on and so forth. So we should be ready by the 24th. We have it scheduled, and hopefully everything goes smooth.
That's fantastic. I think the infrared study was a great study to do, and moving from a rolling schedule into a worst to first makes a great deal of sense. So thank you both for engaging in that. Bob, are you going to speak about the trail? Is that completed, or is John going to speak about that? Or
Well, John can speak to the trail is not yet done, but John, go ahead.
not finished? Okay, where are we in progress? Because it looks great.
It's substantially complete. The only work that needs to be done, he needs to correct some soil erosion sediment control measures to reinforce it, because we do have a storm drain that discharges off of Fairmont. It's a county system that just discharges onto our property,
And without the site being stabilized, being disturbed, the soils are not stabilized, and so he does need to do more to stabilize the soils so that the soils are protected due to that, primarily due to that discharge. But that's really where it stands, is to really, you can walk the path today, it just needs to be restored along the sides. The scouts have expressed an interest to get involved with the final restoration. They are planting certainly areas which were disturbed when we moved the corn shed over, and some areas were disturbed, or some areas were disturbed when we placed additional soils on site, just which were removed from the DPW yard. So there were areas that were disturbed beyond the contract's limits, and so those areas are being addressed through the Boy Scouts. They're planting wildflower seed and coordinating that. So it's a great project for them to get involved and do that. So it'll probably be, because we were working with the Boy Scouts, it may take another weekend or two to coordinate all that, but the path, for right now, the path is generally open. You can walk it.
Well, terrific. That's another great example of grant money going towards creating passive recreational space, and I'm a huge proponent of the pollinator gardens, so that's great that effort is going on as well.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Albert, do you have any updates?
No report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Greg, do you have anything?
No report this evening.
Well, you geared up there. I thought you were going to have a report.
We have enough on the agenda tonight.
And then over to Bob.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would like to let you and all who are watching know that the Hilltop walking path is a beautiful path to walk. I walked it on Tuesday morning, May 11th, and the path looked good. There's a couple of ponding areas that I took pictures of, and so that'll be corrected. But it's just, now that the weather's good, it really is a beautiful place to take a walk. Tonight, I've decided not to go with the 69 items on the agenda, but I would like to talk about 2 items. And the first item that I'd like to speak about is the 2020 Township Audit. So the Township Audit has been completed, and it's been submitted to the Township Committee for review. I'm pleased to report that this is a good audit. There is one finding, and there are some minor recommendations. The mayor is holding up the 154-page report, which
I'm doing the Vanna White this evening. This is the book that we received.
Yep. Which I have read twice and tabbed. So it is a valuable document, and they are good to look at. So the audit, the one finding that we have is that is about segregation of duties with respect to some of our treasury functions, and these duties can't be completely separated because of the size of our staff. But in 2020, we were able to change some work procedures so that we were able to separate some of those functions, but not all of them. And then we're also using some software, some electronic systems that will help us reduce potential exposure in the future. So we're also using updated software to help with this. And as time goes by, as more people are paying online and we're doing more things electronically, the exposure that we had will continue to be minimized. Well, maybe. Minimized. So the audit that Mayor Vanna White was holding up before will be posted on our website tomorrow morning, as well as our compliance plan, or our response to it. So on tonight's agenda, there are 2 resolutions. Resolution 2021-139, which is the certification and review of the audit, and Resolution 2021-120, which is the corrective action plan. So that's what I meant was also going to be filed tomorrow. The corrective action plan had been submitted to the Township Committee for review on Monday, April 26th, and it will be sent electronically to the state with the audit. So what does the audit tell us? So the audit is a snapshot, but it shows that the town, and one of the things that it does show, besides different the balance in different funds, is that our fund balance at the end of the year increased by $190,000. So between December 31st of 2019 and December 31st of 2020, our fund balance increased by $190,106.48. And this increase is a very healthy sign. It shows that the township's financial management, which is based on the strategic policy that's been set forth by this township committee and past township committees, is successful. The policy and the actions that have been taken have helped us to meet the challenges of COVID-19 during calendar year 2020. And there are some other actions that we will be taking in 2021 to again ensure our conservative fiscal prudency so that we have funds for an emergency. So that's the important topic that we need to discuss tonight. Our CFO is available if there's any questions, as well as our audit partner, Valerie Dolan. They're both available, but
Well, could we open it up to the committee now, since we have Deb?
Sure.
Deb, thanks very much to Deb King for all of her hard work, and to Valerie for all of your hard work in producing this audit every year. I have to say it's not the most scintillating read, but it does provide very valuable information. I like the synopsis a little better, but job well done.
Thank you.
And if any of our committee members have any questions for Valerie or for Deb or for Bob regarding the audit. All right, looks like you came clean there, Valerie. You're in good stead.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for the opportunity to work with the township.
Thank you, Valerie. We appreciate all of your counsel and service. Thank you.
Have a great evening.
And Deb, if you're still on, thank you. Oh, there you are. I see you there. Thank you. I know this is late for you. You've got a long commute, so thank you for joining us this evening. Is there anything that you'd like to say?
Nope, all is well. All is well.
Well, thank you for all of your hard work. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bob, did you have anything else?
Yes, one other item, and this is so that everyone can put their thinking caps on, and this is related to trails. Over the next meeting, or maybe the first meeting in June, we'll be having some discussions about potential Morris County trail grant applications. The deadline to submit a letter of intent to apply for grant funding is in the middle of June of this year, and then the completed application is due by the middle or late July. So John and I and some others will be discussing this, but we want to ask the Township Committee for their input, and then we will put it into the salad bowl and see what we can come up with, something that works and will be a similar success as the walking trail on Hillside Avenue.
And I'm hoping that we can reach out to our partners in the planning board because of the circulation element that Kathy Abbott and I believe you, Stacy, have been working on, which is an update of the original plan that never went forward, but there's some significant elements in the circulation plan, as well as our partners in Safe Routes to Schools, and looking at the possibility of connectivity in terms of any future trails that we're able to link to. Or I know, John, you had an idea of linking up Nash over to the post office, Green Village Post Office. So I personally, I'll put my idea forward, which is I'd really like to focus on some connectivity issues with these grants.
One of the ideas that has been nixed is John was looking to do a multi-level connection between them, and so we did eliminate the zip line because we thought that would be too expensive. So.
I'm too old for the zip line. That's too near, so I'm not going for the zip line. So we're encouraging members of the public to come forward if they have ideas for trails, and reaching out to our partners in the community as well. And please feel free to send us your ideas as we move forward in seeking more grants to provide more recreational trails. John, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just note that the DOT also announced that the municipal aid grant program is open again for applications, and that will be, Bob and I will be bringing recommendations to the committee to consider. And so that's due, I believe, the beginning of July. So we would need to make that decision soon so we can wrap up that application too.
Yeah, that's on for the May 27th. Yeah, that's on for the May 27th agenda.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Bob, is there anything else?
That's it, Mayor.
All right. Well, we have a very full slate of discussions going on this evening. And Bob, how are we going to allow the public to participate? Are we going to go through the discussions and then go directly into the hearing of citizens, or is there going to be...
Well, Mayor, perhaps it would be good if we had both presentations and then had provided the opportunity for residents to ask questions about both after they have heard them.
Yeah, I kind of would like to separate them because...
So
are you suggesting 1 and 2 and then public comment and then 3 and then public comment?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Our first discussion item up, and we've moved these up to the beginning because we recognize that not everybody's staying up till 11 o'clock at night. So I'm going to hand it over to Carl to discuss where we are in discussions for the Rolling Mills remediation plan and the future use of that site. So Carl, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mayor. It's a pleasure to report to you. At least some of what I'm going to report are things that you've been involved with, and Stacy directly, and Bob, but also things that I have been involved with. Starting back in around the 11th or maybe it was the 15th of April, there was a citizens advisory group meeting that was held virtually online. There were significant presentations that were made, and there were a lot of questions, and this was directly with the EPA, and there were a lot of questions that were being asked, and among those questions, and this is what I'm really going to focus on, was the potential for reuse of this site at some point in time after the remediation was complete. If that was possible, how to go about achieving that result. And long story short, the question period didn't finish. It was a 2-hour meeting, so about, 10 days later, or 2 weeks later, there was another CAG meeting that was held. In the meantime, we had this committee, representatives, Mayor and Stacy and Bob and myself, had conversations with EPA directly in which we expressed our concern about, well, what are you doing and how is this being evaluated, and what sort of evaluation are you going to conduct given the age of the feasibility study and the financial cost evaluation that had been completed. Long story short, the next day, the EPA had the second CAG meeting, and they stated that, yes, we are going to update the costs from 2017 to the present, and they would be asking the PRP group to provide an analysis, at least financial, of the potential for an alternative remedy that had been proposed informally by the Fish and Wildlife Service, most particularly the Great Swamp National Wildlife Refuge. One of the points that we made, however, as we talked about this was, it's been talked about a lot, this alternate remedy, but it's never been put down on paper. And conversations that have been had, and Mr. Hoffman had a meeting with Mike Horn and Anna Harris back on April 29, and that was put directly to the refuge. Guys, we don't know exactly what it is you're talking about. You talk about it, but let's see something in writing. And in response to that, finally, we received a draft of a document from Mr. Horn, submitted to Mr. Hoffman, that we're in the process of reviewing right now. And the expectation is that it would be forwarded to the EPA for their evaluation. In the meantime, the EPA has confirmed, and I also confirmed this with the PRP Group's counsel, that they are going to be doing this updated financial evaluation, and they are going to do some sort of evaluation of this proposal that is being put forward by the refuge. Now, the problem is they don't have anything specifically in writing. They've only had the talk that they've heard so far as well. However, there'll be more substance to that, and we wanted to make sure that we were providing, and the committee gets real kudos for this, the momentum for getting people together and talking about what the possibilities were, whether the alternates that were there already, proposed in the feasibility study, or this alternate, we'll call it alternate 6, had merit, and how it could be accomplished. In that regard, there was a very recent meeting with members of the Township Committee and the refuge representative, Mike Horn, and the Great Swamp Watershed Association, with a view toward moving this along. In that regard, one of the things, obviously, since the landfill itself isn't, it's one coherent piece, 175 acres, but 35 of those acres is owned by the refuge, and 130 acres is owned by the Mealy Trust. The comment has been made, and that came out of this meeting with the Watershed Association and the refuge, was that we really need to be talking to the Mealy Trust. The Mealy Trust has settled at least part of claims against the landfill with the PRPs. In conjunction with that, there was a conservation easement that placed on the property to ensure that it's never developed and that it remains open space. So I was tasked with contacting counsel for the Mealy Trust and finding out if the Mealy Trust was willing to work with us. I'd had prior conversations with that attorney who said that he would welcome it, so I confirmed it about a week later, and he is talking with his client, Mr. Mealy, who is the trustee, about dates, hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks, that we could meet and have some conversation about what they're interested in doing and how they see themselves going forward. The process is a long process. It's been going on for a long period of time. It's not over by any means. The important thing about it is that we're moving it forward, and we're seeing what options are available. There are some ideas that are floating about that, who knows, may result in some real advances, but right now it's too early to say. The other, of course, obviously, is whatever remedy there is going to be issue of cost, and which remedy is going to be the most cost effective and which is going to provide the most usable space, usable in the sense of open space that would be available to the public, in as much as 35 acres is theoretically open to the public. It's part of the Great Swamp Watershed, the Great Swamp Refuge Wilderness Area. And so what possibilities there are there? We're in the early stages of this, but as I said, in credit to this committee and the administrator for moving the ball forward, I think we're doing well. So I'm available for any questions anyone has.
Thank you. I'm going to open this up for any questions from the committee. Okay, seeing none. Carl, if I could ask you to stay on.
Okay.
I did mention in my mayor's message that we're very appreciative of the members of the Great Swamp Watershed Association, the Wildlife Refuge, and I think, Carl, to your point, just getting everybody at the same table, because we all have the same desire to have the most open space, public space, 365 days a year access, which is a changed use from what has been proposed in both 2018 and in this round of the feasibility study. So we're all on the same page. It's just a question, as you pointed out, there are many paths to get there. Some of them are not so easy. But it was great to sit down with everybody and really, because what the EPA is asking us to do is put pen to paper. As you pointed out there, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of good ideas, but nothing that's been written down for them that can be actionable from the EPA's standpoint. So we're getting there. So thank you for continuing into your 20th year on this. Seeing no questions from the committee, we're going to move on, and then we will take questions on both the Rolling Knolls remediation efforts and then our conceptual plans for 522 Southern Boulevard. So we're going to move on to the presentation from the Walters Group, which is going to be a concept presentation on where we've landed in various discussions with them, taking into account community concerns and neighborhood concerns, the site itself, how best to situate the site. And this is a jumping off point. This is a first step in the process where a lot of the meat and bones happens in the planning board process. But Bob, do you have anything else to add to all of this before we introduce the Walters Group?
No, Mayor, just that a lot of effort has gone into it up to now, and it's important that the concept plan be shared with our residents so that they can see. But again, I wanted to reiterate the point you had made that the real work will happen at the planning board once the application is filed. But this is a very positive step so that people can see, and let's go on with the unveiling.
Well, welcome, gentlemen. Greg, do you have to unmute them, or do they unmute themselves?
They have to unmute themselves, I think.
Can you, all right? And
Yes,
then
I-
screen sharing?
Yeah, it's authorized, they can share the screen.
Terrific. Thank you very much for coming tonight and making this presentation to our residents. And I'll cede the floor to you.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure to be here. I want to thank you all for the opportunity. As Mr. Hoffman indicated, we have been working diligently with some of your elected officials and your staff to try and put forth the best product that we can here. We've had a little bit of difficulty in the sense that it's only been recently that we've been able to really physically get on the site and do some of the work that's necessary to get to a site plan. So because of that, we're working, again, very diligently towards a site plan, but in order to do a site plan, we need to get surveys and do various testing and so forth, and we're in the process of doing that now, and we will proceed in due course to a full site plan. That said, we are far enough along, and we have done enough work that we think it's appropriate at this point to give you a preview and an idea of what a community here would look like. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is I'm going to ask, as Vitel was here with me, you can see with the picture, to start the slide presentation, and I'll speak to it there. But before I start that, I'll just note that on the line in the virtual meeting tonight, we have our engineer, Rob Ritchie, we have our architect, Ken O'Brien, and Kevin Dow is also he works with me, he's our finance specialist. Just in case there are questions that I can't fully answer, at least we'll have them available so that the questions can be answered. I sometimes get stumped with questions that people ask, but so hopefully we'll have the better minds to answer those questions. So with that in mind, if it's appropriate, I'll go into the screen and I'll start talking about what we're going to do. Okay, we're working on it. There we go. So the first screen is obviously just an aerial of the Southern Boulevard site. It's about 3.2 acres. It's bordered in red on this site. Up right above it is a gas station, an existing gas station, and some wooded area. Above Shunpike is Madison. Right below our site is an assisted living facility. Directly across the street is a shopping center. Sort of catty corner is a pretty substantial apartment community, so sort of similar to our use. And directly behind us, as you can see, is a single-family residential community. Here is a conceptual site plan, and I'm going to talk about the details, each of the details of this as we go through. But this gives you an idea of how things would be set up. So you can see where it says Southern Boulevard on the top of the screen or on the left side of the screen, and the setback from Southern Boulevard and Building 1. Building 1, as I'll show you later, is a two-story building. The idea that we collectively had was to try and orient that building onto the highway on the Southern Boulevard so that it wouldn't be too large and would be consistent with the other land uses in the vicinity. As we go back, buildings 2 and 3 are three-story buildings, the purpose of which is to be able to accommodate the number of units that you're required to provide in connection with the settlement agreement you have with the Fair Share housing group. There are 63 total units. 62 of them are 100% affordable. One of those units is a superintendent unit. There will be a veteran's preference for 25% of the units. Some of the keys in setting this up, now, when you have a site that's 3.2 acres and you need to get to a certain number of units, that obviously presents certain challenges. And there are some key items that the township wanted us to honor. One was to not make the buildings loom over Southern Boulevard. The other was to make sure that we respect the boundaries of our neighbors, residential neighbors to the rear. And you can see where it says wooded area to remain, there's a 75-foot rear yard setback prior to getting to anything. We have proposed, one of the amenities that we proposed is a half basketball court in the rear of the property there. That is, of course, outside the 75-foot buffer. The parking is approximately 115 or 120 feet from the rear property line. But we have a solid 75-foot buffer, which will remain as wooded, and then grass or other plantings will be put there. And then we would have the basketball court, the parking, and then as you move towards Southern Boulevard, you can see we sort of build it on a spine, which again I'll show you. There's a community center. You can see it sort of in the middle, hugged between buildings 2 and 3. And then as you go down that courtyard, there's a top lot. Typically, we like to have all of those amenities right next to each other when we can. Every site doesn't work out exactly that way, and we thought the next best thing was to build them along the spine that we've shown here through that courtyard. And then you, of course, run up to building number 1, which would be at the top, and again, it's a 2-story building, and that's got 16 units. And one of the other buildings, I believe there are 23 and 24 units to get to the total number of units. Again, we're not going to talk about the site plan too much. Those site planning issues will come. Part of the reason is because we haven't finished the site plan, so it would be difficult to give really in-depth answers. But I will talk about a couple issues that are really important. The first is stormwater. The advantage we have to this site is that it's not a greenfield site. It's a redevelopment site. As everyone knows, there's an old Charlie Brown's restaurant, which I think closed prior or right at the beginning of the pandemic and has never reopened. There's a large parking lot, so the site is pretty well paved over already. We will have less impervious coverage by the time we finish building than they already have on the site. So there'll be a reduction in the stormwater coming off the site. The second part of it is there will be a very sizable reduction in the impervious coverage that is parking lot. So some of the impervious coverage will come off the buildings, but the water that's coming off the buildings is much cleaner than the water that comes off the parking lots. So in addition to reducing the total amount of impervious coverage and therefore stormwater, we're also able to improve the quality of that stormwater. And, again, we'll get into the details of that when we get into a site plan. I just think it's an important issue for people to understand that we will be in this redevelopment effort reducing impervious coverage to the site. Traffic issues, you can see where the driveway is. There's really no other place to put it. There's only one way in and one way out. Again, the traffic at peak hour, I'm not a traffic engineer. We will have a traffic engineer at site plan who will have done a full traffic study with all the numbers. They're out there actually doing those studies as we speak. But we know certain things. We know that, for example, at the peak evening hour, the traffic from a Charlie Brown's is significantly more intensive, or a restaurant, or any of the retail uses that we've permitted here, significantly more intensive than what will happen with a residential community. So the traffic compared to today, when no one's using it, will of course be greater, but the traffic compared to what was there at Charlie Brown's when it was operational, and to what is permitted under your zoning in a retail facility will be lower. Again, our traffic in the morning would be higher because unless you have a restaurant that was open for breakfast, but in the peak hours in the afternoon, and the overall traffic numbers will be lower. So again, we'll get into the details of that, but I thought it was appropriate to just give you a little preview and hopefully put people's minds at ease that you're not going to get extensive traffic added. And we also think that the traffic's going to go on to, Southern Boulevard and Shunpike, and it's not really going to be disseminated into any residential neighborhoods. So it's going to go from there on the highways. It should have no negative impact on the traffic flow in the community. I'm going to talk about the amenities further as we go forward. I've got some things to look at, but again, what we try to do is try and have a space where children can play. The basketball court is an example of that. Typically do a half-size basketball court. We do not light it because we only want people on it during sunlight hours. So in the evening, it's not used. This time of year, you can play a little longer than you can in December and January. And we use it not just for basketball. Kids just play on it. Then we have grassed areas where kids can throw balls and do the things that they do. We have the community center, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, but outside of that, we usually have grills and benches and a place for people to sit and enjoy themselves, hopefully in an area where they can see their children playing, they're in proximity to them. And then in this case, as we move farther towards Southern Boulevard, we have a top lot. In a perfect world, that top lot would be right next to the basketball court or in more proximity to the community center. You'll kind of see that in the photographs I'm going to show you later, but some of the things that you do, you have to work inside the parameters so that you can fit on the site. And the last thing I'll mention on this slide is, you see where it says trash in the sort of at the end of the parking lot in the upper right-hand corner there. What we do, we don't have dumpsters on our site. We have everything in a compactor. We have recycling there in a compactor, and we have one location. The purpose of that is to make sure that the trash doesn't sit out. It's also not available to animals and birds and all that. Once you put it in a compactor, it's sealed. There's no smell. It operates much more efficiently and much more cleanly than a typical apartment site with dumpsters. It also looks a lot nicer. I always sort of use the illustration of, when you have high tension wires over your head on the street, you notice them kind of, and they don't look great. And when they're placed underground, it looks nicer, but you can't always say exactly why that is. The same thing's true when you get rid of dumpsters on a property like this. They can be an eyesore, the gates break, people don't handle them correctly. So I'm going to show you some pictures of that as we go forward. So, and you can move on, thanks. This is just an aerial perspective of the property. And you can see Southern Boulevard, pretty clear what's there. It shows you the 2-story building up front, and it shows you the 2 3-story buildings connected by our community facility in the back. It doesn't give you a full appreciation for how much room there is from that parking lot to the properties behind us, but as I indicated, that's about, from the parking lot, it's about 110 feet or 115 feet or so. So on the top of the roofs, you can see there, they're hollowed out. The reason they're hollowed out is because we put our mechanical equipment on the rooftops, so they're not on the ground and they're not making noise and they're not impacting any of our neighbors. Go on to the next one. So here's kind of the meat of the presentation. This is the elevation from the front of the community. This is off Southern Boulevard. So as I indicated, there'll be a 35-foot setback from the right-of-way line, which is not the street, that's the right-of-way line. It's a 2-story building. You can see that we have brick facade with lap siding. Every unit has its own balcony. We think it's important for people to have some outdoor space to be able to enjoy themselves. We do it in almost every community we have, wherever we can do it, and we're doing it here. We also, one of the things that we like to do, and we think it's important, is for everybody to, we call it having their own front door. So what happens here, you can sort of see the person in the perspective, getting close to the door. When you walk into the door, there's a vestibule in there, and there's a door in that vestibule that goes into the ground floor apartment, and there's a door that goes up the steps. Sometimes you'll see them on the exterior. We're proposing to put them on the interior so you can't see it from the public. What we don't have are common hallways. We don't think, whenever we can avoid it, we don't want to have common hallways. They create a maintenance nightmare, and they also detract from the idea of community having your own home. We like people to be able to walk in their own front door, not having to share that entry with other people, and to know they're in their own home. So that's very important to us, and we'll move on to the next one here. And this is just the rear, and I think one of the things I want to emphasize is we're not just going to put brick on the front, and then kind of cheap out on the rest of the on the rest of the features of the building. They're all the way around the building is the same. So we have a good bit of brick. You can see the community center in the back, the glass area, which will be sort of central to the overall space. You can see the grass area off the parking lot. There will be, the idea is the basketball court is slated to go back there into that area. Otherwise, it'll just be grass, and it'll be the vegetation that's back there to provide us with an appropriate buffer to the folks behind us. That community space in the back, this is the area, you don't see it there, it's not in the perspective, but this is the area where we will have the benches and the grills and the places for people to be on the outside. It could be on the side that you're looking at, it could be on the inside as well in that courtyard area. Let's go to the next one. So this is that courtyard area, so you're kind of standing at the Southern Boulevard side, essentially standing in the top block that we mentioned and looking down that courtyard. The courtyard is 40 feet wide, which is about the same height as the building, which our planners and architects and professionals tell us is appropriate. Obviously, we'd love to have a 100-foot wide courtyard, but we're constrained by the boundaries of the site. But we think the idea is to build a sense of community and have people be able to come out and look into an area that isn't a sea of parking, isn't facing a highway, or looking at the parking lot across the street, or the assisted living facility behind us. Of course, we border them, and people are going to be able to see them from some windows. We try and orient the community into a community space, and that's the reason for doing this. We're, again, given the limitations that we have with the site and the need to achieve a certain number of units, we feel really, really good about where we've been able to come out with this with the help of all of your professionals. This is far and away from the first iteration we had. It's been a work in progress. and we've been able to whittle away at it to get to a point where we feel really comfortable with what we're presenting and feel confident going to the public and laying this out. Is it perfect? Probably not. And will we make further improvements? Probably. But we feel really good about the bones of what we're presenting to you. So go ahead to the next one. So starting here, I want to make sure I'm clear with this. I'm going to show you photographs. These are all photographs of our communities. These are things that we've built, and these are typical of what we build. Right? Rather than just show you a drawing of something, I thought it would be better to show you pictures of what we do. Again, you look at this, you can see a top lot to the left, you can see the grills, you can see a basketball court. Well, they won't necessarily line up that way on this community, but they do give you a good idea of the kinds of things we build. The grills, and you'll see a different version of those in a second, but they're gas-powered grills. Everybody in the community can use them. Our maintenance people maintain them and deal with all of that. The basketball court's right there. This is one where there's a large basin behind it, and then woods. Of course, Chatham's in a different spot. But you get an idea there of the area where a child can play. Over on the left-hand side, you can see a top lot. Go to the next one. This is an example of a top lot that we've built. That concrete structure to the right is actually a trash enclosure, a compactor. But again, we'll get to that. Where these things, where we have room, they can all line up. We typically actually have more equipment than this in the top lots, some slides and some jungle gyms and other things for kids to climb on. Again, this is an example of what we have built. What exactly will happen here, we haven't got through the design yet. Next one. Again, this is an example of an outside patio next to a community building, right next to the community. You walk out the community, you walk here, you sit outside. These are a different kind of grill. We've used both. They're also gas-powered grills that our residents use. And it's a nice area for people to be able to sit outside, socialize, hopefully watch their children play, and become part of sitting out there enjoying being part of the Chatham community, Chatham Township community. So these are the kinds of things that we build. Again, they aren't necessarily, these are all representative photographs. They aren't the nicest. They're representative of what we do in all of our communities. Again, considering, sometimes, when you're in Ocean County, you might have a little more room, a little elbow room to maneuver on the land. And in Chatham Township, it's a little bit different. Land is a little more valuable up there. And so, you've got to work with what you've got. Go to the next one. This is a community room, one of our community rooms. This gives you an idea of what we do. I will say in our senior communities, they're used more regularly, but they're used quite a bit in our family communities too. People can have gatherings there. We have our offices there and our social services that we have set up in these communities. We'll do our social services. Those social services could include helping people with job training, helping them with financial issues. In this past year, it's been very significantly dealing with the pandemic and making sure that all of our people are safe. We very recently just had, or not, maybe a month ago, had a massive vaccination campaign with all of our people. We have almost 2,000 units now. So we were busing and bringing all of our people, especially our seniors, who hadn't got vaccinated yet to get vaccinated. But they're the kinds of things we do here. We have computer labs for our kids. You can't see them in this picture, but homework club, we do summer programs and stuff like that with our kids, SAT programs. There are some of the social services that we offer our communities, and we typically do them. Not only we have this, there'll be a room for meetings and stuff like that in that community room. Next, this is a gym. We have a gym in every community. I think this one's actually in the senior community, so it's small, probably a little smaller than what we will have for this community. As in most places, people love to use the gym. People use our gyms frequently. They're fobbed. 10 o'clock at night, after 10 o'clock at night, they're locked, you can't go in, but you can go in, I think, from 5:30 in the morning or something like that before you go to work. People can get into the gym and work out. And again, we found over the time that it's something that people really, really want to have, and people use it frequently. Go to the next one, Ed. This is a typical kitchen, and you can see the flooring. We have granite countertops there. I'll tell you that in, I think, all but one or two of our communities, we have granite countertops. A couple of them we have, the Formica or the other material. We expect and hope that we'll have granite countertops in this community. They look nicer and they also wear better. So, that granite countertop will be there for 20 years. We're not going to have to replace it. Generally, it doesn't get chipped or broken. You can see the refrigerator is a large refrigerator. It's not something small. We've learned from doing this for a long time what people need and want. Give them a little room. Typically have a pantry so that people can store their food and so forth. There's a dishwasher. There's obviously an oven that you can see. There's a microwave, and all the comforts that people need in the modern world to live on. One of the things that I probably should have shown in the photograph, which I don't, which is very important to our folks. We do surveys. This is always the number one thing in the survey. We want a washer and dryer in our unit, and we want it side by side. And so every one of our units, whether senior or family, has a washer and dryer in the unit and is side by side. We will definitely be doing that here. Most developers in our category do gang washers and dryers. You've got to go to the community and do that work. Obviously a little less expensive. Maintenance cost is a little less expensive. We just think from the perspective of human dignity, you'd like to have your own washer and dryer in your own unit. I know I would. And again, as I said, when we do surveys, that's the number one item. So next, Ed. This is just a picture of a living room, with no furniture in it, ceiling fans. We try and put ceiling fans in both the living room area and in the bedroom. Again, you never know what surveys are going to show. Ceiling fans are a really popular item. People really want them. This is just a sort of typical bathroom. Nothing fancy, just to give you an idea. And then depending on what units there are multiple bathrooms in the units. We also, in appropriate cases, all the ground floor units are adaptable, and we will have certain of the units fully accessible, which will have rolling showers and all the stuff that goes with it. And we can modify all of these things on the first floor to provide that for people who need it. And we do find in our communities, especially if you're catering to veterans, that you do have people with physical disabilities, and you need to provide for that. Next one, Ed. So I shouldn't finish with trash, but I'm going to. This is a photograph of one of the areas. I think this one's in Evesham, Marlton, and it's the same number of units that we're doing here. So this is the size and the exact design it will be. And so you can see it's not huge. Our own maintenance people operate it. No one's allowed to operate. They can come in and drop their trash in the bin. The compactor is operated only by our folks. We have the recycling there. Then we have an area also for larger, when people move in and they have big boxes, or they want to throw out a mattress, or when you have larger trash items, we have a space for that so that it's not visible to the public. No one can see it. Then you go to the last one, Ed. And this just shows what happens is once a week or once every other week, whenever, depending on how much, because when you compact it, you obviously keep the trash in a very small space, and it is sealed so you can't smell it, and it's not very loud. It meets all the sound standards, and I'm sure we'll deal with that more specifically in the site plan. But a truck comes in, they open the gate, they roll it out, they take it, they roll one back in, and that's it. And they only come, they're not there very often. The recycling, they come a little more often. But again, unlike a dumpster where the trash trucks and the waste refuse trucks are coming frequently, they don't have to here because we're able to compact everything. So hopefully that gives you a pretty good sense of what we're proposing here. Again, I appreciate the opportunity. I'd like to thank your professionals and all the folks on your staff who have been so cooperative and helpful in moving this thing forward. We look forward to continuing that process, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Joe. This is a terrific presentation. And I'll open it up for any comments or questions from the Township Committee. I'm going to go ahead and say then that from where we started, Joe, 2 months ago, or gosh, was that even 3 months ago, with a variety of concept plans, and us bringing to the fore some of the, we had meetings with the residents of the neighbors in the back area, and we're very pleased with your understanding and your desire to preserve that tree line and the concerns that residents had about having a density of or a big building that was going to come right to the edge or something along those lines. And I think that keeping the building at 2 stories in the front, I know there were a couple of different iterations where there was the community center as part of that building, and we asked you to move that back, and where the top lot was located and moving that back. I really love the perspective of the where you see the middle corridor, the various roof lines, the outside space, and this concept of having your own door. I love all of that. The rear elevation looks just as nice as the front elevation, especially with the community center bridging those 2 buildings. So I'm very, very pleased with the way that it's exceeding my expectations as the way that it's turning out to look with all of the architectural features and the cupolas, or I don't know, whatever you call those, in front of the doors. It's a very homey appearance, and it looks like it would be a lovely enclosed community that is away from the traffic of Southern Boulevard. So very much appreciate all of the efforts from where we started, which again was just boxes on pieces of paper, to all of this. So thank you for building or proposing to build what looks to be a very, very nice and a very high quality facility.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we, as I said, we really look forward to building something great in Chatham.
Anyone else on the committee or our professionals have any other comments? John, thank you for all of your hard work on this, as well as Bob.
Albert too.
And Albert.
Yeah.
I was just about to say Albert too. Jeez. Wait a minute. I have allergies. My throat is tickling. Anyone else like to add in? John?
No comments, Mayor.
Yeah, I had a question, and thanks for the presentation, and I understand this is preliminary stage thing, but it's good to see you've made a lot of progress so far. You might have said this, and if you did, I apologize if I missed it, but the concept of the 3-story buildings, are those buildings going to be compliant with current height restrictions, or is that something that you're contemplating variances being required for?
We do, they will be compliant with your current plan, your current zoning, and we don't anticipate any relief being necessary from your current zoning, with one exception, and that is I think it's a quirk, but the trash compactor, you have a 200-foot setback from perimeter for a trash compactor or trash facility, and ours is only 110. Other than that, I'm not aware of any waivers or design waivers or variances that we would need.
Okay, good to hear that. It's obviously there's a lot of, and again, I feel like I keep caveating this, but we're in the very preliminary stages of this, it goes without saying, but a tremendous amount of facilities, which is a good thing, appreciated for children, and particularly young children. Can you talk a little bit about your experience and expectations, analysis about the number of children, particularly school-age children, that could be expected to occupy a development like this?
Sure. That is a question that we get in every presentation we make, and it's an appropriate one, and one I'm sure people are interested in. So over our entire portfolio of family communities, not counting the senior ones, we average just under 0.8 school children per unit. Now, I would expect the number to be a little bit higher here for two reasons. Reason number one is you have a very, that town that everybody wants to live in, right? So if you're working at that shop right across the street, you have two kids and you got to drive 40 miles, you're going to want to live here. Everybody's going to want to live here. They're going to want to put their children in your school districts. So I think we're going to be popular for that reason, and I think we should allow for that. The second thing is that because of the way your plan is, typically what would happen here is 20% of the units would be one-bedroom units. And that's not the case here, because those one-bedroom units are essentially in a different place in town. We've taken them and put them somewhere else. So we have more bedrooms than we would typically have in one of these communities. So I've never done one, I've always done it the other way, and so I can't predict with any certainty how many we'll have. I can tell you that we have 0.8 now. I would expect it to be a little higher than that. My best guess is, around one child per unit. I can tell you that, again, in our entire portfolio of family communities, don't count seniors, we average 2.4 residents per unit. And so they're not, people have an expectation. You have a lot of people in here. It's not the way it works out. Again, there'll be more people here because we don't have the one-bedroom units. But again, because it's only 20% of the total, I don't think it's going to skew the numbers a whole lot, but it will skew it a little.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that, and appreciate you acknowledging it's a little uncertain, but it'll be something we can evaluate as this goes forward. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joe, do you have a sense of, the 9% tax credit application is due, I guess, the end of August. Do you have a sense of the competition in terms of how many other applicants there is going to be relative to past years, or, how many applications might be granted?
Well, both good questions. So we do have a very good idea and a good feeling for what is happening now. Between now and August 31st, more communities will appear. You'll see evidence of them. We do, as part of our due diligence in the business that we're in, we mine the websites of all communities so that we can see what our competition looks like. I can tell you that last year, they awarded 6 family suburban awards, LIHTC awards, in the state of New Jersey. And there were 27 perfect scoring applications made last year. I'm not even counting the ones that didn't achieve a perfect score. So the competition is extremely tight. How many, they only awarded a certain number of them last year. We got several of those awards. There'll be, I would assume, most of those applicants will come back, and we know of some additional ones. I can tell you that we feel very strongly that we'll be very competitive with an application here. So as we go forward, and as I've done in the past, I think with your folks, as we learn more, we'll continue to provide you with that information so that you're aware of it as we go. It won't be absolutely perfect, but we've been doing it a long time. We get a pretty good idea who's coming in and what there's a tiebreaker that decides who wins and loses. We get a pretty good idea of those tiebreakers. Now, I don't want to make it sound too terrible, because out of that, the ones that didn't get funded, there's a number of them that really aren't going to be competitive for whatever reason. They're not an area of the state where they can be competitive. They have costs that are so high that they can't make it work. So all of those 28 weren't super competitive, but the last couple of years it's been super competitive, and we've been extremely successful. I think, and I haven't really measured it, but I don't think any developer in the state has gotten more 9% tax credit awards than we have in the last 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it's been, or tax credit awards generally, because some of them were actually Sandy dollars. So we have a really good feel for it, but it's a real competitive process.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the committee who has questions for Joe or comments? Because if not, we're going to move ahead and let our residents make comments and questions. And Joe, if you guys will all stick with us, as well as Carl, what we're going to do next, seeing no more comments or questions from the committee, is that we're going to go into...
Can I please
I'm
make a
sorry,
comment?
actually, I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, I'd like to just ask a question real quickly. So, my concern is, so I'm looking at like the front of the building with Southern Boulevard, facing Southern Boulevard. Is the facade there all flat, like, kind of like Juniper Village, where there's no like balconies or anything like that?
Well, it's not flat, and that's an important issue to raise. I mean, we all know and we've all seen it, if you look at a building that's got a wall on it that's 40 feet long, and it's got no breaks in that wall, it's not very pleasing. So if you look at, and I don't have it up, but I'm looking at the photograph of it, there's balconies, then you'll have, a brick piece, you've got some of the design and the peak up top, in and out, and then then it moves back in the site, you have a porch, and then back out, so there's lots of breaks, and they are very important features to include, and we do include them. Again, we're certainly open to suggestions, as we have been, because part of what we've produced has been a result of what your professionals have suggested, and that is exactly one of the comments they've had. Make sure you don't give us a big flat wall. That's not going to work.
Right.
So we've tried to accommodate that. And
The street view rendering on page 2.
Right, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
But I guess my question is because, it does face one of two of our only shopping centers, and we obviously want to make sure that we maintain the value of those shopping centers. I'm just want to make sure, I don't know if it would be the best idea just to have balconies facing there. That's my only concern. Something that we might want to consider, as people can do things on balconies, or it will.
Can you pull up the Southern Boulevard view so we're all on the same page? Because I'm trying to understand because I remember seeing balconies, and so I'm just curious to see what Ashley's referring to.
We're about to
This page.
put it up. Going next.
Nope, you passed.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's
That's
the
it.
street view.
So just let me say about balconies, I hear your concern, and the answer to that, I think, is management, right? So you can't allow people, like, you can't have your bike and your, it can't be your storage spot for your kids' toys and your stuff. We don't allow that. It's in our leases. Those patios need to be kept, and balconies need to be kept clear. We generally don't have trouble with that. One of the things we didn't talk about here is we will have bike storage on the property somewhere, so that people can't say, I don't have anywhere to put my bike. Yes, you do. We've got bike storage. You can stick your bike storage there. Typically, that's right where the community building is, or near we sometimes append it to the trash compactor, so folks there's a roof over it, so people can get their bikes out of the weather. So these are issues, again, when you have 2,000 units, you see pretty much everything that can happen. And I agree, if you're not careful, balconies can look very bad. If you do it right, the balconies can look great. And that's what happens.
I totally agree. And thank you. My entire issue, just because I have seen messy balconies, especially when it faces one of our only areas where we can actually have restaurants. So I want to make sure that that area is protected.
That's a very legitimate concern.
Thank you. And I thank you very much for this presentation, and really appreciate all the work.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on to the public comment session. This will be the first of a couple of public comment sessions. We're going to be able to, in this discussion section, we'll have the Rolling Knolls topic and the conceptual plans for 522 Southern Boulevard. And I'll read the comment. If you're watching via cable TV or on Comcast 29, FiOS channel 26, you can participate in the public comment sessions of this meeting by dialing any of the phone numbers which are listed on the agenda and will be shown on your TV screen. And when we get to the appropriate time, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. If you're watching via Zoom, you may speak during any of the public comment sessions by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. When you raise your hand and are recognized, please say your name, spell your last name, and give the name of your street. You do not have to give the number. All public comments will be limited to 5 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, we'll wait until you finish speaking before responding. We have a couple of public comment sessions, as I've mentioned. Each member of the public will be limited to one comment of up to 5 minutes during each of the public comment periods. Written comments submitted to the township clerk before 3 p.m. today will be read during the public comment sessions. Written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments, namely each is limited to 5 minutes, and one or more may be combined if there are duplicative written comments, or may be summarized rather than read in full according to the guidelines issued by the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services. Greg, did we receive any correspondence?
We did not.
Thank you very much. Then I'll go ahead and open it up to the hearing of citizens.
Is this just for those first two topics?
This is just for the first two topics as I described, the Rolling Mills remediation efforts and the plans for 522 Southern Boulevard.
Okay, we have 2 hands raised. First is Jessica Romeo. If you could state your name and your street.
Sure. Hi, Jessica Romeo, Pine Street in the township. That was pretty impressive what the builder presented. That was awesome. Thanks for having that happen. But I'm calling about Rolling Knolls. So I think it is fantastic and great. I'm thrilled you're in discussions with the refuge, the Great Swamp Watershed, and have met with EPA. However, I'm really anxious to see what's happened with sending a new letter to the EPA. It doesn't sit well with me what was sent back on December 11th of 2019, stating that the township supported scenario remedy number 3, which was basically fencing off the land. So I think it was said, let's see somebody put pen to paper. I'd really love to see the township put pen to paper. There's an urgency for Chatham Township to send a new supplemental letter or an amended letter to the EPA expressing the desire to have this land opened for public use and passive recreation. So I'm really anxious to see when that happens. I hope it happens in the next week or so. Time is of the essence. I don't know what the delay is. Thanks.
Thanks, Jessica.
Anybody else?
Do you have anyone else?
Yes, we have. Next up is Francine Leff.
Thank you so much. Fran Leff, L-E-F-F, and I'm on Joseph Street, one of the streets adjacent to 522. I have one question, 2 comments. I'm a runner, and I obviously live right behind Charlie Brown's. And so is someone going to upkeep the property up until the time of building? Because the grass is horrible, and there's so much garbage all over the place. It's really an eyesore, and certainly I think we're much better than that as a community. So I'm hoping that now that we own the property, we can start taking care of it. That's my question. My comments are to the builder. Great presentation, so thank you so much. So is there a potential possibility for a fence prior to the tree line? Because on the other side of our property is Shunpike Field, and believe me, trees do nothing to prevent people from coming over to our lake. And so there is a dilapidated fence now that was put up many years ago when it came to be built, but certainly we'd like to have potentially thoughts of putting something up to prevent people from coming into our neighborhood, and especially to our lake. So I'd like to have them look into that. And then the second comment on the trash compactor, I don't know if what you were saying about only your maintenance people being in charge of it, does that mean when it's actually compacting, like the noise of that? I don't know how loud that is. It sounds like it would be loud, and I've seen other trash compactor areas, and it is very close to the neighborhood. So I don't know if that could be potentially moved to a different place, like where the Charlie Brown's trash was, although we know that trash bins caused all the issues with all the trash that gets into our neighborhood all the time. That and obviously the Juniper and the gas station, they all have horrible trash systems there. But I'm just wondering if they can potentially move that away from where our neighborhood is from a noise perspective, even if it doesn't smell or potentially the trash can't get out.
Okay, thank you, Francine. As to the current condition of the property,
Yeah, we don't own it, but we have property maintenance enforcement, so we can.
we don't own the property yet, but we do have, we can contact the owners and make sure that the property is kept clean and free of trash. And then, Joe, I'm going to let you answer the other questions with regards to the trash and the possibility. I did see in one of the pictures for the basketball court that there was a fence out. Is there a possibility of putting kind of an enclosed fence around so that it doesn't, kids aren't enticed to go over to Sunset Lake?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, if I may interrupt, I think comments of this type should be noted by Mr. Del Duca and considered between now and the site plan application, and where he can give full consideration to the comment that is made. I think trying to redesign the concept plan while Mr. Del Duca is on his feet puts him at a little bit of a disadvantage. So my suggestion is Mr. Del Duca can note these comments and either address them or be prepared to address them at the planning board where that is really, as you stated before, the substance of the planning of the site.
That's fair.
And that's fine. I will say a couple things. Number one, the expectation is that we would have a fence on the back property line for the reason it's not shown on the concept plan, but typically we would do it, and we would certainly do it here. And I'll just tell you that trash compactors, the noise level of trash compactors is very low. There's decibel measurements and specs for that, and we'll get into those details when we get to the site plan. But they won't hear the trash compactor in the residential neighborhood.
Thank you. I think I captured, did I capture all the questions?
Yeah.
Greg, next up.
Next up is Tom Evans.
Hi, Tom Evans from Birchill Drive. I have a question regarding the Rolling Knolls landfill discussion. You talk about lots of ideas, and you don't say what they are. And you talk about specifically alternate 6 option. Is that something you could tell us what that exactly is?
Sure. There is no alternate 6 in the feasibility study. There's alternates 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and alternate 3, I think, has three separate subparts, and alternate 4 has at least 2. We're calling it alternate 6 just for purposes of convenience. It's the one that Mr. Horn of the Refuge has been talking about for several years, but has never put in writing. The basic concept of it is that he wants all of the garbage that's on the, and waste that's on the 35 acres owned by the refuge to be removed and put on the 130 acres that's owned by the Mealy Trust. He also wants a large excavation on the Mealy property with that soil, which he contends is reusable because it's clay material. Garbage and waste would be assembled into or collected into the excavation. And then to the extent that you didn't do that, you would use the material that was excavated, assuming it could be dewatered and that sort of thing, and use it and make a cap over what remains of all the garbage wherever it's located. It's not been designed. It's not part of the alternates A through, or 1 through 5, although arguably some of the concepts are touched on in alternates 3 and 4. So we're calling it alternate 6 for convenience because it gives us a clearer identification than, part D of alternate 3 or part C of alternate 4, that sort of thing. So that's the basic concept. The advantage, of course, is that if you can use material from on site, you limit the number of trips of off-site material being brought in to build the cap. At this point, it's being priced out or evaluated by the PRPs at the request of the EPA, and the EPA is obviously going to be considering it.
Thank you, Carl. Bob, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, what we're referring to as alternate 6 from the Fish and Wildlife Service was just received this past Tuesday, which is May 11th. So we are reviewing it, and the good news is that there's no, you don't have to guess. Everything is now in one document, and that document is being evaluated by Mr. Woodward and some of our internal staff, and then we will ask some more questions, and eventually it will go to the EPA for the evaluation. But what we are referring to as option 6 is something that was just received on Tuesday, and it's positive that it's now all in writing, and we can make sure that all aspects of it are evaluated based on 2021 costs.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Next, Leah?
Jen McNally?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great, hi, Jennifer McNally on 19 Ferndale Road here in the Township. And got 2 quick things. First off, to the builder, thank you so much for your presentation. I drive by the site every day. It looks like you guys did a really thoughtful, well thought out plan, and it seems as if you really got a lot of input from the Township Committee, from residents of other planning communities that you've done, and sort of taken a lot of input and a lot of thought and time into this. So it looks great. It looks something that I think people really like to drive by and see on a daily basis. I probably drive by there at least 20 times a day, so it's important. So it looks great. And I think it's very thoughtful for the residents too, and for them to feel as part of the community and part of their own community there in that development. So I think it's great. Really, all pieces really have been brought together there. So thank you. And my other thing is about Rolling Knoll. Jessica Olivio spoke a few minutes ago about the amended letter to the EPA, and I also want to say I support this and would hope that we would be able to get something out there, because I think from the previous meeting a few weeks ago, Township Committee, it seemed as if time is of the essence, and this activity is going to pick up steam, so that if we can amend our statement and our stand on this, I think that would be really helpful. So that's it. So thank you all. Thank you for your hard work. I know Carl Woodward, thank you for this. It's a lot of work, these CAGs and everything else, so I really appreciate your time and effort that everyone spent on this. It's really very important. It's probably one of those significant projects we'll see here in the township for a long time. Thank you.
Do you have anyone next?
We have several. Dot Stillinger?
Go ahead, Dot.
Yes, hi. I'm Dot Stillinger, Murray Avenue, and I'd like to just make my usual comment about Rolling Knoll. Right now, the only, right now, the way things are set up, there are only 5 alternatives being considered, and the only paperwork that we have seen so far is a letter from December 19th stating that the township advocates an alternative that leaves a lot of waste on the property and that does not allow trails. Now, that's what's been written down. That's what's being considered. That's what's on the table right now. So I would strongly urge the committee to send something in writing to the EPA that says that the set in stone choice of alternate 3 just doesn't hold anymore, that other things are being considered. Let me point out that alternatives, the alternatives on the table now, so-called alternatives 1 to 4, are cheaper than remediating the whole place, but it would mean that we could never have access to that open space. There would be no possibility of putting in trails. We'd have unusable open space. And in a town that values its recreational opportunities, the possibility of having more trails, places for people to walk and bird watch, there's even a pond there that could be used for kids for fishing. The possibility of that not happening is dreadful. So I really urge this committee to, everybody on the committee is going to be off the committee at some point, and you're going to want to look back at what you accomplished while you were on the committee, and you need to ask yourself, do I want to walk away leaving 140 acres in Chatham Township open space that will never be able to be used for any kind of recreation for the residents of Chatham Township? And right now, the things that are written down that can be done by the EPA right now are alternatives that would prevent passive recreation. Now, just one other technical point. The EPA is required to consider possible future uses of the property when they make a final determination. And right now, a perfectly plausible future use of that property is trails. The Morley Trust is probably not going to own that property forever, and 2 plausible things that could happen would be for it to be purchased by Chatham Township, or donated to Chatham Township, or purchased or donated to the Great Swamp Refuge. Because no development is ever going to be permitted, there aren't a whole lot of other choices as to what can be done. I just can't believe that the Morley Trust is going to continue to own that property forever, pay taxes on property that can't be used. It seems to me that a possible future use is for it to become Chatham Township open space or to become part of a refuge. And in that case, that can't happen unless an alternative is chosen that allows for trails. So I hope that you will consider having that be something that you really value, being able to say you accomplished. Thanks, folks, for listening to me one more time.
Thank you, Don. For everyone who's addressing this, and if it didn't come through in the initial conversation about Rolling Knolls, one of the reasons why we're moving this forward with our partners, or partnering with the Great Swamp Watershed Association and the Refuge, is because we heard loud and clear that, well, we heard it in 2018, but we're hearing it again now, that they may be moving towards a decision. And for those of you, and those of you who have spoken tonight, have all participated in the CAG meetings, and we've been hearing about this additional remedy, which is, we're calling remedy number 6. We've made the step of getting the refuge to put that remedy in writing to help define it. We have been clear with the EPA that we're looking at a changed use of the status of the refuge for 365 days of use. unlimited use, not trespasser use. It's currently, the current standard is approximately 84 days of use. So us and the Great Swamp and the Refuge, we're all on the same page. As Carl has indicated in his conversations with the attorneys and with the attorneys for the EPA, in reaching out to the DOI and reaching out to the attorneys for the Mealies, we're moving in that direction. Because again, we all have the same goal of having this as open, passive space, or passively used space that residents can enjoy. But it's not that easy. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces to this. So we have to be sure that this is something that, at the level of the cleanup that's going to happen, that we're requesting from the EPA, that gets costed out. As I think I can't remember if I mentioned this before or not, the option number 5, which is a full cap for the site, is currently at about $62 million. And interestingly, at the last CAG meeting, they said, gee, that's plus or minus 50%, which I couldn't believe. And then they said, well, and it never comes in below cost. So we need to, understand what option number 6, which is encapsulating in the site, using on-site source materials, is going to do. Hopefully, it may even bear out to be at the same cost or less expensive than a full site cap, which would have truck traffic that would not be advantageous to the Green Village area. So we are moving in that direction. We're moving our partners in that direction. But we still need to gather some more information, and I believe the meeting, if we're able to get that together with the Mealies, that we'll be able to get there. That's our goal. Anybody else?
Yes, we have several. Next up is phone number ending in 7778.
Oh, you have the floor, 7778.
Hi, this is Stuart Carr from 3 Crestwood Drive in Chatham Township. Good evening, everybody. A couple of comments. First of all, for Attorney Woodward, I'm not sure if you were referring to it or not, but this Mike Horn about not having things in writing. There was at least one document that I saw called FWS Comments and Rolling Nose Landfill, dated April 13 of 2021. And that speaks to the hybrid alternative 5 with respect to the landfill, and I think some of the digging a deep hole, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not sure if your comments about nothing in writing is exclusive of that, but if you haven't seen that document, that's something I think that at least sheds a little bit of light on your comment as to what they're doing. Nothing substantive in there in terms of meets and bounds and quantitative analysis, et cetera, but at least laying out the idea of the passive recreation and capping the site with some variations on the alternative 5. That's item number 1. Item number 2 is, like I said 3 weeks ago at the last meeting, I was a little bit disappointed, or continue to be, that there didn't appear to be too much discussion on this discussion item. Mayor Ness has made some comments, but I didn't really hear too much back and forth after Attorney Woodward concluded his remarks there earlier this evening prior to the 522 Southern Boulevard presentation. So maybe we're getting up to speed, but it sounds like we're, pretty far along here, and maybe some public discussion by the members, would be helpful. Number 3, and this is the third time I've asked the question, I'll try it again here, for Mr. Hoffman. When was the public discussion in calendar 2019 or whenever that led to the letter, which I think was dated December 11th of 2019 under Mr. Hoffman's signature, that went to US EPA that advocated for alternative 3? I didn't see anything anywhere in notes. Maybe it's there, but I'd like for Mr. Hoffman to answer that question at this point. What was the date of the public discussion of that letter before it went out? And I assume that the public was aware of it, but I didn't see it, and I'd just like to get some clarification there. And then with respect to that, does the committee intend to send a letter that says we're rescinding the letter of the 19th of December 2019, or not rescinding it, but we want to amend that letter to include the optionality to discuss more alternatives? Because as we all know, apparently the town is very, very integral to the decision-making process. And right now, notwithstanding Mayor Ness's comments, All they have in writing right now is, we like alternative 3. And by the way, we have the final feasibility study determination activities coming up here in the next few weeks. So presumably Chatham Township as a town would need to act pretty quickly with that letter. So I'm asking here, what is the timeline for sending an amended letter? First of all, do you intend to? And number 2, what is the timeline for sending an amended letter to say, in addition to alternative 3, we'd like to consider or have other alternatives considered? So that's where I am tonight. Thank you, everybody, for your time. And if Mayor Ness and Mr. Hoffman could address that, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl, did you want to just speak to some of the things that we've...
Well, let me just talk about timing first.
Yeah, some of the timing.
If you were on the CAG call a couple weeks ago, and we've had subsequent discussions with EPA about this, they acknowledged that they're not going to, at the earliest, make a decision on the feasibility study until at least September. And they're not planning on holding any public hearings before then. So this is what's been portrayed right now as something imminent within the next month or two is really not going to happen. And the reason for that is, among other things, is the Fish and Wildlife Service has advised the EPA that they are doing some additional field studies that are going on right now or started this month. Well, when you do sampling and that sort of thing, it takes a while to take the samples, and then you have to have the testing, and then you have to get a report. And that's going to take, I think, more than 2 months, probably 3 months. And once that's submitted to the EPA is going to have to look at it. The other thing right now is we're having conversations actively with people about what to do. As was described, we, and Mr. Hoffman mentioned, and I think the mayor mentioned, we have a proposal that was received just 2 days ago, or a few days ago, by from the refuge, Mr. Horn, to Mr. Hoffman, at our request, at his request. You know, it's like, you want us to advocate for this alternative? Well, you've never put it in writing in any substance, and if the most recent one, I haven't seen, Mr. Carr, the one that was in, you said this year, my history goes way back on this, and I've never seen anything in writing about it until just now. And Mr. Hoffman said to Mr. Horn, you'd better put it down in writing for us to review, and we'll send it to the EPA if it, you know, and that's what the intention is. Meanwhile, we're engaging everyone in discussions, so we're trying to be the motive force behind getting the parties talking to each other. And because there hasn't been a lot of conversation that's been productive, so I understand, up until this point. So there are a lot of moving parts. These cases are very complex, and they're very delicate because it involves not just 1, 2, or 3 parties. We've got, in the end, we're probably going to have 20 or 30. And when I say parties, I'm talking about the people that are going to end up having to pay for this, which is also a factor. So that's what I have to say at this point. And I don't know, Bob, do you have anything you want to add?
Sure, Madam Mayor, can I?
Sure.
All right, good. Mr. Carr, one thing, there was an email that you sent today. You can see the April 22nd meeting. It's on YouTube, there, the YouTube channel, so you can just click on that, and it's posted there. So just please look there. You had also asked a question about the letter. The letter was sent for specific reasons, and there was discussions in closed sessions and executive session in August. And the letter was designed for certain notices and to make sure that the township was in a position to have the most options available in the future. So the letter was designed for a specific purpose. it was sent for a specific purpose, and sometime in the future, we will be able to talk about it in a more orderly fashion, but it was designed and sent for a specific purpose, and it's actually doing the job that it was designed for. So I'll leave it at that.
I guess in terms of, it sounds like Stuart's just trying to get a sense, because Tracy's been speaking for all of us, trying to get a sense of where everybody else is on this. I think, probably the key thing that describes it for me is everybody wants the property and nobody wants the liability. And that's something that's got to be solved for, and we're not going to put the township in a risky situation. So we're proceeding cautiously. We'd all love to have the space available for trails, for recreation use. It's just a matter of how to do that and, successfully. And battling against the EPA, they've presented their other options is a 25 to 30 acre cap. So to leap from a 30 acre portion of the property that never had any waste on it was part of the area that was going to be closed off. So to make that move from this 25 to 30 acre and expect that they're going to, leap to 170 acres that's then going to be, passed over to somebody for use. We're very much involved in creative problem solving and trying to figure out how to get the best for the community, how to get the right answer for the community. So we're all on board. We're thrilled the Great Swamp is working with us. We're thrilled that Fish and Wildlife is working with us. The EPA is working with us. There's good discussions going on. I get what you're saying about the letter. It's frustrating that it's out there, but the EPA is very much aware. And to me, the key thing is the EPA has said repeatedly that they haven't decided what option they're supporting. So that in itself, I don't know why we would, select something that they haven't even endorsed. So, but I think we want to be further along. We have a couple more steps to do, especially bringing in Mealy Trust to the conversation before we can. I'm fine saying, at this point that we don't support option 3, and there's still a lot of work to be done. Just that we were just debating when to put that in writing.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else?
Next up is Rich Ryan.
Rich, you have
Hi, thank you. Rich Ryan, Rolling Hill Drive in the township, and I'll try to keep this brief because when I raised my hand to speak, there had been a single comment made on this topic, but since it's been well addressed now, I just wanted to throw my voice behind those who have already come out speaking in favor of the township doing whatever it can to make sure that the Rolling Knolls site, is that the solution does involve some sort of usable open space. I mean, I'll admit, I like to think, maybe I'm wrong, that I tend to be a little bit more up on these types of things than the average township resident, but until a couple of weeks ago, or I'd say until about 2 or 3 months ago, I should actually say, I had never really paid a whole lot of attention to the Rolling Knolls issue. I had heard the name thrown around a lot, had never really dug into it until the last month or two, and was pretty floored just to kind of see what the opportunity potentially is here. So just, again, a lot of this has been said, but it seems like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity if it can be done in a way that's, not too costly to the township, and, there's no issues in terms of public safety or public health with how it's done. You would love to see the township just do whatever it can to, make sure this is something that the residents can enjoy kind of going forward at some point. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. We're on our way. We're getting there. Do we have anyone else?
Next up is Joe Bezrelian.
Thank you, Joe Bezrelian, Fairfax Terrace. I've changed my comments about 11 times while listening to the meeting, and my comment now is, this is one of those meetings where I just remind myself, and listening to all of you, that Chatham Township can accomplish anything. We put our heads together, the professionals, the advisors, the representatives, the community. We absolutely can, through creativity and expertise and drilling down and being dogged, can accomplish anything we put our minds to. And I just feel things are really, you all are doing that. I think that is my biggest overall takeaway. And does that mean I really believe that through our work with the EPA that we can create a solution where we have access, and where EPA, seeing our conviction and our creativity, will apply even more of their own and come up with a way in the next feasibility study to propose it in a way that makes very cost-conscious people comfortable? Yes, I believe all these brilliant people with all this training and all this love for our community will do that. So I just wanted to, rather than get into specifics, I wanted to kind of feed into that conviction that I'm hearing on rolling knolls. And part of that comes from hearing the individual speakers. You almost get I think Dot Stillinger said it incredibly eloquently, just how much our actions today stand for time immemorial. And when I walk through Giralda Farms, having played just such a tiny little role in that preservation project, I mean, I'm not being modest, really tiny role, but I still feel such pride and such joy when I see how much people are enjoying that property in so many different ways, and the way it is so uplifting to them. Tens of thousands of people a day, and I drive by and every day I see so many cars, and I'm on it and I see so many people using it. It just makes me feel such joy. And I know we all have those things that we've accomplished in our lives, whether it's our children succeeding or something we've done that created a mark on the world. Well, this is our mark. Rolling Knolls is our mark today. The other reason why I feel that way is because I think that the presentation from the Walters Group was terrific. And all the work that's gone into that, between the engineer, the administrator, the lawyer, and you, and the Walters Group, I think I'm really inspired. I find myself not just looking at it as something I want to drive by, but I feel that feeling that I would be very glad to live there at some stage in my life. Like when I start feeling that I would, that's a very appealing place to live and be, and I can even see myself there, then that is where I think we're really going in the right direction. Obviously, to get to executing on it in all the ways that it's been presented tonight is a different matter. But again, I think we can all accomplish that together. So I'm sorry if I told anyone I would say anything very, very specific. I'm not going to. I feel good. I think we can do this. Let's just stay brave. Let's just keep going for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else?
Yes, next up, Lefty Grimes.
Good evening, Council. Yes, this is Lefty Grimes, 84 Hanover Road, East Hanover. I'm also with SativaCross.org. We're a 501c3 here in New Jersey, advocating for disabled rights. And I used to work in Bell Labs before I got injured, and I would go through Chatham every day to work. It was I love the town. I still go there. I just went to Marie's for chicken, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but I actually know the place you're talking about, and I just passed it. And I think that was a great presentation. I only have two questions. My one question is, how many disabled parking spots are available for visitors planned, and what is the percentage of ADA compliant units? Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, I think you can answer those questions.
Sorry, okay, yes, so I don't know the answer exactly to how many parking spaces there will be. Typically, we have more than are required, there's a certain amount required by law. Because we have special needs folks that we serve, we add spaces to accommodate wherever they are. All of the ground floor units are adaptable. There will be a certain number of units that are fully accessible. That'll depend on how many folks we have with disabilities. There will be some, and as I think we've indicated, the high likelihood is we're going to participate in a program which will add folks with disabilities to come to this community. So I don't know the exact number. By the time we get to the site plan, we'll probably know a little bit better, but there are going to be plenty of opportunities for people who have those needs. And I can tell you that in our communities, we serve that population, and we're very pleased to do it, and it's a very rewarding thing to have in your community. So we look forward to doing that here at Chatham.
Thank you, Joe. We look forward to that part of it too. So, do we have anyone else?
Lisa McHugh?
This is Marty McHugh, along with Lisa McHugh. I've been assigned to do the talking this evening. However, we're at Ormont Road. We're virtually collective. Thank you very much for a lot of alignment, I suppose, is the best word. Mayor Ness, in your description, it sounds like is also aligning with the sentiment being echoed from Dot to don't lose the opportunity and have it put away. So that is the statement and support or comment that we have. But we also have one other question, and that is for the committee or whomever can answer this question, and that is by way of influence in what the Township Committee can do, or by level of influence, to create a decision that goes toward the favor of keeping access to that eventual property, no matter what the resolution is, as you work through it and get the details and consider what the best option is going to be. What can the Township Committee do, or the Township, to influence the decision that benefits the Township for that specific purpose to retain the ability to access that property? Thank you.
Thank you to the McHughes. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but so what we're doing right now is we're coordinating all of us who have the same interest, which is bringing that land up to passive use 365 days. We've communicated that to both the EPA, we've communicated that to the PRPs, we've communicated that to our partners in the Great Swamp Watershed Association and the Refuge, and now it's a process. So everyone is aware that there is a potential change a desired change in use for the site. There are complications along with this, as Carl had explained prior to, in that it's privately held land. There has to be discussions with the Mealy Trust, which we're putting together as well. And who is ultimately going to take possession of that land. And again, as Stacy had mentioned, with the liability issues, there's not only liability for cleanup issues, but there's liability with regards to environmental damages. There's a couple of subsets of areas where there are some difficult issues that are going to come about, which is possibly having to have some financial responsibility from the cleanup itself. And there's a whole nother area of environmental damages. So we're putting all of this together and getting everybody at the table because the Refuge will be involved with some of these things as well. They have financial considerations that they have to take into account. But what we want to get to is, and again, we use this word, putting the pen back to paper and making sure that we have all the information that we possibly can have about how this is going to work, and who's going to take the land, and how is it going to be maintained, what are the future possibilities for it. And we're really solidifying and codifying all of these ideas that have been thrown out over the last 2 years or more, as we're hopefully getting to some sort of resolution, hopefully by the end of this year. So yes, what we can do is exactly what we're doing. Getting everybody to the table, having these discussions, putting things in writing, engaging the PRPs, the EPA, the refuge, the Watershed Association, engaging our residents, and at some point, we're gonna call on all of you to write letters to the EPA, expressing your interest, or in the public comment period, whether that comes at the end of this year or hopefully sometime soon, because the will of the public is also very important. So we're doing really what we should be doing right now. And I'm hopeful that we're going to have a positive outcome. Anybody like to add to that?
I just want to add one other thing, and that is that the EPA has told us directly that the actions or the position of the township, the interest of the township in this property, will have a significant impact on their decision. What that will be, I don't know, but bottom line is they have indicated they will listen to us.
And that's a big step forward from where we were in 2018. Okay. Do we have anyone else?
Christine Pagano?
Christine, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Christine Pagano. I'm on Edgewood Road. And I'd like to actually start a discussion about a tree ordinance. And I'm here tonight to talk about an incident that happened on March 31st where behind my property on...
Hi, Christine. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're having a public discussion on the Rolling Knolls landfill and the conceptual plans for 522 Southern Boulevard right now.
Mm-hmm.
Could I ask that you hold your comments?
Sure.
Thank you. We're going to finish this up. We're going to move to the pesticide ordinance, and then we'll open it up for general topics. Do we have anybody else who'd like to speak about Rolling Knolls or the conceptual plans for 522? Okay, seeing none, then thank you very much. We'll continue to have these conversations. Thank you, everybody, for your input. And we're going to move on to our discussion item number 3, which is the pesticide ordinance. And I believe we have someone from...
Well, did you want, we can say goodnight to Carl and to...
Oh, you're going to let Carl go home? I was going to make him stay.
Wait, you can let him stay, but maybe we'll let...
I did too many of those late meetings, guys.
That's very true, Carl, and I was there with you. So,
Yeah.
Good night, Carl. Thank you very much.
And then the Del Ducas, we can thank them, the
And
Walters
Joe
Group.
and crew, all of you who are on the call, Rod, Kevin, I hope I didn't miss anybody. Thank you very much for really a terrific presentation that I believe exceeded expectations. So looking forward to the site plan and to moving forward into the planning board phase.
Thank you for having us. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, and good night. You're so good, Bob.
Every once in a while.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the pesticide ordinance, and I believe we have somebody from the Environmental Commission who's presenting the pesticide ordinance? No?
No, not to my knowledge.
Oh, okay.
Celeste?
I thought this was just, for tonight, was just so that the Township Committee could review it, and then there was going to be, there was going to be a discussion on the 27th.
Okay, so then we're just going to have a discussion on the pesticide ordinance, and, yes?
If you want, this was sent to us by Kara Fieser, and I see she's in the audience, if you want me to bring her in.
Yeah, actually, why don't you bring Kara in, because I know that this is something that's, she's been working on for probably more than 5 years now. So it helps to hear from someone who has a great deal of expertise on all of this. Kara, do you mind if we call on you? I don't want to do it last minute if you prefer to wait till the next meeting.
No, you can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't prepared, but I'm happy to talk now, as I always am, so.
I knew it wouldn't be an issue, but I wanted to give you an out just in case.
So the reason why the Environmental Commission has put forth this ordinance is because it really, I think, symbolizes the desire and reflection of the township residents to have safe playing fields for recreational areas as well as colony pools, safe areas for kids to play. There's been numerous amounts of scientific research that's mounted over the years that just demonstrates how low-level exposure to pesticides really impacts the health of everyone, but especially children, because their bodies are so small and it's more difficult for them to, they absorb more of these chemicals and more difficult for them to process. So with that, we put forth this ordinance really just to continue to safeguard kids, dogs, families, everybody from the harmful effects of pesticides.
Kara, when did we first go, was it 2018 when we first went pesticide-free on our fields and we used organic lawn care?
So this would be going into our 4th year. So does that make it 2018? I believe.
Tom started that.
Tom was still here. Yeah.
2018.
Yes.
Yeah, it enjoyed broad support at that point in time. We've continued with this process we're now in our 4th year. With regards to the kind of Chatham Borough is pesticide-free. The schools have been, I don't know whether you want to call it just kind of hands-off or not necessarily organic maintenance for many years. And I think it is something, if I can speak for myself, that is something very important to me to keep our fields free of pesticides, not only for our children and our pets, but for our pollinators that suffer when they ingest pesticides. And we have 4 years track record so far with our fields and our public spaces. And I would be very strongly in support of continuing this path that we've been on. So we'll open it up for discussion with the committee. If anybody has any discussion.
Wasn't this also in support of the silver status for?
That's one of the things. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Just in case you didn't hear, Stacy, that was the silver. You were talking about the silver status for our sustainability.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. This will kind of codify what we've been doing, and by passing it in an ordinance form, it will provide sustainability points for moving towards our silver certification for sustainable Jersey. All right, well, seeing no more comments, then we can wrap up discussion on the pesticide ordinance. And Gray, when would we bring this forward?
If I'm so directed, I will put it on the next agenda on the 27th for introduction.
I am so directing you.
Okay.
Excellent.
And there'll be an opportunity for more community discussion at that time.
Terrific. And then we'll also have a public hearing on it. Thank you very much. I'm going to move to the public hearing and final adoption of ordinances. That's ordinance number 1, 2021-11, small cell sites. Greg, could you...
Are we having the hearing of citizens first?
We're
The
going to
open.
roll through this very quickly and then go to the next.
We're bypass. Okay. Did we have the hearing of citizens? Did I miss it? The open hearing of citizens.
Oh, the open hearing of
for any
citizens.
topic.
I apologize. Yeah. Okay, you're right. Sorry, we're having a lot of open hearing. Okay, you're right. Now we're going to move to our second hearing of citizens. If you want to discuss the pesticide ordinance, or we'll just open it up to whatever else in this comment round. Greg, do we have anyone who is going to raise their hand for the hearing of citizens?
We do not. There was Mrs. Pagano that was here before.
Mrs. Pagano, if you're there, now's your time.
This is a couple of other people raising their
I
hands.
don't know if she's still in the audience.
I have 2 participants raising their hands.
Lefty?
Good evening, Council. This is Lefty Grimes from 84 Hanover Road, East Hanover. I'm also with sativacross.org, a 501c3. In New Jersey, we advocate for disabled and for cannabis patients' rights, and this is what I came to talk about tonight. I'd like you to consider a medical dispensary. We need all the help we can get, and we don't have one in this area. I currently have to drive a half hour, 40 minutes to a dispensary of my choosing. And that's pretty far considering, I mean, in my area, I can just go to Walgreens right down the street, or I can go to any pharmacy to get any kind of pharmaceutical or synthetic marijuana for that matter. You know, that's not banned, that's okay, but the medicine that God put here seems to be stigmatized. And I've been to a lot of council meetings, and I ask each council the same question. I said, will you spend a day in the wheelchair? And I'll do it with you. Nobody's taking me up on that, because being in a wheelchair is very tough. You know, a lot of these towns say, oh, you can get delivery, your cannabis delivered. Okay, well, that's an extra cost. First of all, if you're in a wheelchair, most likely you're on disability. You don't have a car. So when you get to the dispensary after spending an Uber ride, if you can get your electric wheelchair in an Uber, you have to incur that cost. When you get to the dispensary, and you're in the back of the line, and when you get to the front of the line, the strains that you need are gone, the amounts that you need are gone, and it's overpriced. It's taxed by the state 7%. No other medicine is taxed. They're not taxing your cancer medicine, your diabetes medicine. They're not taxing your heart medicine. That's a slippery slope to go down when they're taxing our medicines. Taxing sick and dying people, because the towns that are accepting this, some towns aren't, but they're not. Some towns are accepting this medical cannabis tax, which is a tax on cancer and multiple sclerosis, a tax on wheelchairs. And I ask, if you do this, please give representation for that taxation and give us wheelchair access everywhere. That's what we need. We need help. But the cannabis we're buying from these huge billionaire companies is moldy. We want mom and pop cannabis. I hope that you would hold out for mom and pop. Hold out for your schoolmates to open a dispensary. Somebody you know personally that you can talk to that wants to open a dispensary. There's plenty of us that want to own a dispensary. No, but we get the billionaires coming down here just raping us over the coals. It's terrible. They're building an industry on the backs of the sick and dying, and we need help. That's what we advocate for. We advocate for the sick and the dying. We advocate for medical. I'm not here to talk about recreational, but I think there's a place for medical. There's a place for all these other pills and all these other things. I was on pills for 10 years. I have an artificial disc. I have a fusion, a 2-level cervical fusion. I was on pills for years. I was a zombie. And I hated being on those pills. And it was very hard to get off of those pills. But I use cannabis oils. I use cannabis suppositories, cannabis lotions, edibles, all kinds of modalities. And I was able to get myself off those opiates. It was not easy. And a lot of people are doing it. A lot of seniors are turning to cannabis. They want alternatives. I use alternative medicine now all the time. I go to an acupuncturist, cupping. I get a TENS unit. I get a cryo unit that freezes my back. I can also get a laser on my back. I get massage. That's what I do. And I do yoga. The craziest thing that I do, I tell all my friends, is do yoga in the shower if you got a bad back. Yoga in the shower. Yeah, try it. Put the hot water on your lower back and do a cat pose, your elbows and knees on the floor. It works. That's what I do every morning to shave pain points, because I'm in pain every day. I look for ways to shave those pain points. And I don't want to take pills. And I would really hope that you would give the residents another option in your town other than pharmaceuticals. And I'll end with this. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Lefty. I happened to be here when you were at one of our committee meetings in 2018 and or 2017, and I appreciate your continued advocacy for the use of medical marijuana. And I'm sorry that you are in pain and in this journey, but very glad that you were able to get off of opiates. That's one of the great promises of medical marijuana, specifically with the veterans population, that they're able to transition from opioid use onto a natural use, and that's shown tremendous promise, specifically for those patients with PTSD. So I appreciate your advocacy, your wheelchair access advocacy, and I wish you well on your journey. Do we have anyone else?
Next up is Jeff King.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey King. I'm at 24 Elizabeth Parkway in Eatontown. Mayor and Township Committee, I appreciate the time to address you. I am also advocating, as Mr. Grimes was, for medical access for cannabis patients who are sick and suffering. Mr. Grimes is very eloquent in his words, and I would like to echo everything he said. Without a doubt, I advocate for the people who are most in need of help and compassion and love. And if we can find a way to embrace them in our community, that would really be a win for everyone, for the healthy people as well, because it's just more loving and kind and happier place. So veterans and children and middle-aged and everyone, we all know someone that we love that could benefit, I think. So first and foremost, medical patients. As far as anything else having to do with cannabis, I think you should keep an open mind and try to be progressive and think about the opportunity for making the community stronger and more resilient. So I'll yield the floor. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have anyone else?
Yes, next up, simply the letter R.
Yes, hi, my name is Marina Redman. I live Burrell Square, Harley, New Jersey. And I'm just going to tell you my story in medical cannabis and how much it's changed my life. I was born with a birth defect on my left leg. Between the ages of 1 and 4.5, I was in a major New York City hospital. I had to have dozens of surgeries. And back then, your mother and father weren't allowed to stay over. So just picture yourself as a parent leaving your little child in a big, scary New York City hospital. And now picture what it's like to be that child. That was me. I had all these surgeries. Then at the age of 4.5, I had my leg amputated. And then I had to spend 2 weeks in a bed, because they did things differently back then. And then I had to spend another 2 weeks in the hospital. This is where my PTSD came from doctors. And my blood pressure used to get up to 199, which is rather high. And then unfortunately, in 2017, I was diagnosed with cancer. The doctors told me. I went away and then it came back. But within the first time I was diagnosed, it took me 4 weeks to get my medical marijuana card. I lost 50 pounds in 3 weeks. None of the medications helped me. Nothing. I was curled up in the ball, vomiting, because all these pharmaceutical stuff didn't work. As soon as I got on my medical marijuana, it helped me out so much. It was a game changer. I have such bad anxiety that the doctors beg for me to smoke before I see them. I have one doctor who says, my gynecologist says, whenever you see me, please smoke. You do so much better when you're stoned. I want you nice and stoned. What doctors tell you that? You know, it's just amazing. You actually have a doctor in your town who is an oncologist who does prescribe medical cannabis. 63 psychiatric doctors in your town prescribe in the state of New Jersey, prescribe medical cannabis. 2 are in your county. 10 pediatric doctors prescribe medical cannabis. 1 of them is in your county. There was a child, really sad, had a 25-hour seizure because she couldn't get her medical cannabis because she was so young, and it was just so hard for her to get. You know, like Lefty was saying, Uber and Lyft cost money. If you're on disability, if you're going through cancer, you don't want to sit in the car for all these hours going from this. And then if you have Access Link, that's horrible. That could also take you a couple of hours. That could take you a whole day to get your medicine. So please be open. Just please consider a medical cannabis station, a medical cannabis place. And if you want to ask me any questions on my journey, please do. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate the journey that you're on too, and I hope that you're on the way to wellness. I do think that there are some terrific possibilities in medical marijuana, and I'm looking forward to seeing those come to fruition for a variety of disabilities and diseases. Do you have anyone else?
Jamie Van Sciver?
Yes, good evening. Jamie Van Sciver, Paulsboro, New Jersey. I also am with Sativa Cross. Good evening. I'm also a medical patient in New Jersey. I have a few diagnoses. I have systemic lupus, which is immune illness, fibromyalgia, moderate scoliosis, a lot of nerve problems, neuropathy, connective tissue disorder, it goes on and on, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. I am 6 years pharmaceutical free, and that's including not getting infusions, that's including not taking any immune suppressants, that's including all of those anti-malarials that I had to protect my kidneys. I'm glad that you talked about veterans. It's a subject that's very dear to my heart. My father was a Vietnam veteran, and he suffered with PTSD. And honestly, I believe drank himself, trying to numb the memories and the pain. I can't help him now. I do as much outreach. I do as much outreach as possible right now. Veterans are suffering so bad. They're killing themselves at a rate of 22 per day. I don't know if any of you are familiar with antidepressant medication, specifically SSRIs. They increase desire for suicide. What are we doing? All of these veterans are speaking out about how much it's helping them. All of these mothers of children with seizure disorders are talking about their child hasn't had a seizure in hundreds of days. I don't know if you've ever seen a child in a grand mal seizure. It's horrifying. And I've been an EMT since I was 16 years old. I was the youngest in the state, and it's horrifying. There's not much that you can do. You hope that they come out of it quickly. Hopefully they got down safely. And then you get the squirt syringes of Depakote and Depakine and Dilantin down their throat. And then they're not what resembles a child after. And to see people use this medication and for it make such life-changing, miraculous things happen, please don't stigmatize this. Please let people have access to this in your community. All of the things that I have, I could have been down a terrible, terrible pharmaceutical path. And when you're dealing with chronic pain and chronic illness, it's very important to understand. Please, please understand this. They are not going away. This pain we can only assume and imagine will get worse with degrading in time. This isn't something that you're going to prop up for a couple of weeks in ice and anti-inflammatories. What are we giving people access to when they have these chronic conditions that are not going away? Please don't put them in the opioid cycle. Then your body wants more, needs more. You build up these tolerances. We need better medical for people in our community. There's Narcan. This is for fentanyl and Oxycontin and Percocet, these things that are in the pharmacy, that are being prescribed, that I could get delivered to my door for free because of my disabilities. Cannabis is not an easy path, And it's not a cure-all. It's a tool in my box of natural wellness, of massage and stretching and yoga and acupressure. It's expensive. This is not easy. Please don't make it harder for the sick, dying, and suffering in your community. Please consider a medical. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Jamie, and I greatly appreciate you on your journey as well. You brought some tears to my eyes there for a second. I think that in the township, I believe, voted pretty overwhelmingly in favor of legalizing marijuana. We'll see what the future holds. Thank you. I think we might have lost Ashley. Mark, you just came back on. If I could just ask our committee members to just please stay on camera. Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Right? No. No? Seeing no one, we'll close that comment period. And we're going to move on to the public hearing and final adoption of ordinances. That's ordinance number 1, 2021-11, small cell sites. You want to read that, please?
It's an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending and supplementing the revised general ordinances of the Township by adding a new section 19-3 titled Sighting of Poles, Cabinets, and Antennas, and Chapter 19 titled Streets and Sidewalks.
Thank you. This is the final adoption of this ordinance. Could I have someone move it forward,
We
please?
need to do the public hearing first.
What? We don't need the public hearing? We don't have to move it?
And then you have to do the public hearing.
Okay.
And then you'll
We're going to
move it
open up
first.
the public hearing on ordinance 2021-11, small cell sites. This gives the public an opportunity to speak specifically to this ordinance. Do we have anybody for the public hearing? Thank you. We'll close the public hearing on the ordinance. And can I have someone move the ordinance forward, please?
So moved.
And a second? Who did I catch? Stacy had moving it, second to, what was the last?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Is there any discussion or questions from amongst the committee members? Hearing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Mrs. Renato?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Eagle?
Yes.
Mayor Ness?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move on to ordinance 2021-12. This is kind of a no-brainer on this one. I don't even know why it needs to be an ordinance. We're reducing the amount of paper, we're saving trees and making it less expensive for people. So, Greg, if you could read it.
An ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending the Land Development Ordinance, Section 30-60.5, titled Application Content, to reduce the number of paper copies of applications and plans to be submitted.
Thank you very much. And we'll open the public hearing on this issue. If there's anyone who would like to speak against saving trees, saving paper, or saving money.
That's right.
Seeing no one, we will close the public comment period. Could I have someone move this forward, please?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Second, thank you, Mark. Could I have a roll call vote, please, Greg?
Mrs. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Mrs. Renato?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Eagle?
Yes.
And Mayor Ness?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Hey, Bob. Bob is thrilled. This is our gift to Bob. Early Father's Day gift to Bob.
Construction office thanks you.
The construction office thanks us. Yes, terrific. We have the consent agenda. Consent agenda are routine items that may pass by a single roll call vote. Any member, committee member may call for a separate discussion or vote on any item. Do I have a motion? Greg, do you want to read it first and then?
Do I want to?
Well, all right, so could you please read the consent agenda?
Resolution 2021-136, payment of bills, 137, approving meeting minutes, 138, approving executive session minutes, 139, certifying review of audit, 2021-140, corrective action plan, 2021-141, refunding overpayment of taxes, 142, releasing escrow balances, 143, appointing technical assistant, 144, amending salary resolution, 145, awarding contract for Colony Pool concession stand, 146, appointing member to the Open Space Committee, 147, refunding road opening permit fee, 148, authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign an affidavit of consideration or exemption and a seller's residency certification, 149, submission of a New Jersey DCA local improvement grant application, 150, awarding road resurfacing contract, 151, recommending award of Noe Avenue resurfacing contract, and 152, approving capital request for bridging space to place project at the library.
Thank you, Greg. Can I have someone move forward the consent agenda?
So moved.
And could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion that, questions or concerns on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, could I move to a roll call vote?
Mrs. Felice?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Mrs. Committeewoman Fondaco?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ewell?
Yes.
And Mayor Ness?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the non-consent agenda.
And Albert asked me, Mrs. Felice, you probably saw that email from Albert for the change roll to attendee.
Wait, we're losing people. I know Ashley has to recuse herself.
So
Just because of the location,
we'll bring her back in as a panel when we're done with this. This is resolution 2021-153, resolution of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing the release of certain cash escrow accounts to the township and release of a performance surety bond to the International Fidelity Insurance Company.
Thank you, Greg. Can I have someone move this forward, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any discussion around this topic? Questions or comments from the committee members?
No.
Okay, seeing none, could I have a roll call vote?
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ewell?
Yes.
And Mayor Ness?
Yes.
Motion passes. And we just click bring Ashley back in as a panelist.
Another?
We do.
Mrs. Felice, you're a panelist again.
Thank you. And then we'll move to our final hearing of citizens this evening. I'm not going to read the stuff again. I'm just going to say, yeah, it's open for discussion. So we'll open the hearing of citizens. Greg, do we have anybody who is raising their hand?
We do not have any hands raised.
Oh, dear.
Seeing no one this evening, we will close out the hearing of citizens. We don't have a need to have an executive session this evening, so do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
And a second?
Second. Second.
Thank you all very much. We'll see you again at our next meeting on the 27th of May. Be well, be kind.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.